Well, welcome again to Sunday School. We're studying magic. Particularly, we're studying Enochian vision magic. And we've just begun today. We're beginning Book 3, Liber Loagaath, and the Angelic Alphabet. Just to prove where we are. Chapter 13, Liber Loagaath. The epigram is from the angel Me, or Me. Now, you can find Me right there. It's one of the daughters of light. One of the 7 daughters of light. And it seems like a lot of these daughters of light are the angels that are giving a lot of information about this period to Dee and Kelley. So that would suggest to the modern magician that if there's holes in your education, you might want to consider appealing directly to the angels of the Sigillum Dea Meth for visions and clarification yourself. So this is an epigram, a little quote from the angel Me to John Dee on Easter Sunday, 1583. Every element of the book hath 49 manner of understandings. Therein is comprehended so many languages. They are all spoken at once, and severally by themselves. By distinction may be spoken. Until thou come to the city, thou canst not behold the beauty thereof. The second phase of Dee and Kelley's magical operation remains, for the most part, a tantalizing mystery to modern students. Covering most of 1582 and 1583, it is a period characterized by considerable tension between the two magicians, but one that also produced a large body of work in the form of a book referred to at various times as Liber Mysteriorum Sectus et Sanctus, the Book of Enoch, and Liber Loagaath. Well, in recent years, Enochian scholars have courageously set out to give us a closer examination of this information. It unfortunately has not been enough to allow modern practitioners to develop anything near a workable system from this material. One of the reasons more attention isn't paid to this period is the nature of the material itself, and the nearly complete lack of direction concerning how it is to be applied. Also, the focus of communications of this period is driven by Dee's very personal fixation on discovering the lost books of the Bible, the Apocrypha, and in particular the Book of Enoch, which is mentioned in several places in the Bible. The resulting character of Liber Loagaath is rich in apocalyptic imagery and prophetic-sounding rhetoric. It has been seized upon in recent years by commentators who would project a patently sectarian interpretation of the material, even going so far as to suggest sinister, perhaps even satanic or Lovecraftian motives behind the angelic communications. We are all, of course, free to our own religious convictions and spiritual worldviews. After all, they're part of the magical artist's palette of tools. I think it's wise, however, to keep in mind that when we study Dee and Kelley material, we're not only eavesdropping on questions framed in the minds of two 16th century Englishmen and put in the context of biblical literature, but we're also hearing the answers to those questions given in such a manner that these men could understand. That is, framed with the same cultural and biblical context. I'm sure if Dee had been a Chinese alchemist or an African shaman, in these same circumstances, the angels would have communicated the same universal answers unencumbered by the apocalyptic nomenclature familiar to Jewish or Christian minds. Joseph Peterson wrote in the introduction of his marvelous book, John Dee's 5 Books of Mystery, quote, "The importance of Liber Logoeth cannot be overemphasized. From it, it would, inner quotes, be restored the holy books which have perished even from the beginning and from the first that lived," unquote. The truth it contains, this is back to Peterson, the truth it contains will end religious disputes and restore unity, which, when it hath spread a while, then cometh the end, unquote. In short, it will usher in the new age. Since the book is so central to these angelic communications, it is amazing that it has remained unpublished. That whole complex text was from Peterson's book. Now we're back to me. Amazing indeed, but as I wrote concerning the Heptarchia Mystica, it's only a matter of time before somebody cracks the code of this breathtakingly immense body of work. What do I mean by breathtakingly immense? One surviving manuscript comprises 48 leaves, each containing 49 by 49 lettered squares. 115,000 lettered squares in all. Each square is filled letter by letter according to Kelley's vision. In the end, the magicians were left with 49 calls in an angelic language. Now, Kevin Kline has relatively recently published 2 volumes. The Complete Mystical Records of John Dee. This is volume 1. And he's got those 49 by 49 tables meticulously reproduced in this book. Page after page after page of those. Now, out of those came 48 calls. Excuse me, out of those 48 pages came 49 calls in an angelic language. But that's not the same angelic language we use for the 48 calls of modern Enochian magic. Lon will explain. Note, these calls were not the same calls in the angelic tongue that would come later and form the centerpiece of the Enochian phase of Dee and Kelley's partnership. Loagaeth literally means speech from God. And the magicians were informed that the words of the 49 calls were the same as those uttered by God at the beginning of creation, in the same language spoken by Adam when he named all things. Unfortunately, these calls were never translated, or else the material has been lost, and attempts by modern linguists have failed to find enough landmarks of a properly constructed language to put the calls of Logoth in the same category as the angelic language that would be received in the third and final phase of the magician's actions. In other words, the angelic language that was produced in the Loagath period of Dee and Kelley produced the language all right and a series of calls in that language. But it was analysts can characterize and itemize and organize, and code breakers can figure out any string of letters in their attempts to break a code that would indicate that there's actually a language involved with consistent grammar and syntax. So in other words, even though we can't, it is untranslatable in a translatable way. So they've come to the conclusion that the 48 calls or the 49 calls in the Loagath period are more along the lines of gibberish. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. You can rocket yourself into an altered state of consciousness with barbarous words of evocation and gibberish, speaking in tongues, etc. But it's not a language. It doesn't have enough landmarks, grammatical landmarks, that would indicate that even the possibility that it could be a language. The 49 calls in the Enochian period, which we're going to discuss in a few days, does have those landmarks with elements of consistent grammar and syntax. And it can be translated, not merely transposed and meanings assigned to certain sounds. It can be translated like Greek or Latin or Hebrew or Spanish. But we'll get to that in just a few days. Okay. Kelley's visionary skills were severely exploited during this period, and his visions were characterized by the presence of a dazzling light that both magicians could see. The light would fly out of the scrying stone and penetrate Kelley's head, putting him in a trance in which he could read and comprehend the text of Loagaeth. He was, however, forbidden to translate it, and was told that God would later provide the translation. At the end of the session, the light would leave Kelley's head and return to the stone. When he returned to normal consciousness, he claimed to have no memory of the experience. As tempting as it might be, I am, for the time being, not incorporating any of the calls from Loagath in my Enochian magic preparation ritual. However, something else of great importance came out of this period: the angelic alphabet. Now this is a very short chapter 14. So because it's Sunday school, I'm going to read that today to us too. Chapter 14. the angelic alphabet. The epigram is describing his vision of the angel's revelation of the angelic alphabet, March 26, 1583. He wiped his finger on top of the table, and there came out above the table certain characters enclosed in no line, but standing by themselves, and points between them. He pointed, meaning the angel, he pointed orderly to them with his finger and looked toward the scryer at every pointing. You know, for some reason, that gives me chills. That last little thing. And he pointed orderly to them with his finger, then looked toward the scryer at every pointing. So I can just see an angel going like, pointing like this at a letter that just appeared, and then looking at you between every letter. I don't know why it just gives me chills. I confess, even with clear copies and transcriptions of the source material in front of me, it's been very difficult for me to wrap my mind around the order of the visionary events of Dee and Kelley's years together. Because certain elements of these magical systems were often corrected or amended by the angels in subsequent visions, often occurring months apart, it's extremely difficult, for me at least, to present a clean chronology of events. The circumstances surrounding the reception of the angelic alphabet is no exception. The alphabet was received during the Loagaeth period, but because the magicians were told to replace the Latin English letters of the Laman, Holy Table, and the 7 Ensigns of Creation with the letters from the angelic script, its influence reached back in time to touch the Heptarchia period as well. The 21 characters of the angelic alphabet appeared fully formed in yellowish letters that rose in Kelley's vision above the table. The images of the individual letters were then obligingly hovered over the sheet of paper and stayed visible long enough for him to copy them in ink before fading away. While the angel is going. Words in the angelic language were written from right to left, like Hebrew. And that is the order the letters first appeared to Kelley. All 21 letters appeared in a single row and were separated by dots. There was also a dot preceding the first letter. Now I posted just below on my page today these two figures from the book. The letters appeared like at the top there, sort of, but they had little points in between each letter, and they had a point at the very beginning. You'll notice that the name for the first letter received, Pa, is the only letter whose name is capitalized. And I'm talking about the chart there. See, there's Pa right there, and it's capitalized. All the other letters are identified in lowercase letters. Pa is the only letter whose name is capitalized. Pa is B in English and has a special significance in the magic of the Heptarchia. For example, the names of all 49 good angels begin with B, and the letter B appears overwhelmingly on the ensigns of creation, and each of the 4 corners of the Holy Table displays an oversized Pa, or B. This abundance of B's has caused several knowledgeable modern commentators to speculate that B must represent the number 7, the number upon which these magical systems seem to be based. While that makes a great deal of sense to me, I have nonetheless found nothing in the original material that would specifically suggest numerical equivalence to any of the single letters of the angelic alphabet. It is very clear, however, or what is very clear, however, is the fact that the communicating angels wanted Dee and Kelley to immediately memorize the letters of the angelic alphabet and the letters' names. Dee was a busy man and wanted to be excused from this time-consuming duty. The angel me would have none of it. In this March 26, 1583 exchange, Dee tries to make the angel understand, look, man, I've got a life. Me. I instructed thee beforehand and told thee that both of you must jointly learn these holy letters, for so I may boldly call them in memory. I'll say that again so the idea smoothly pops out of my brain. I instructed thee beforehand and told thee that both of you must jointly learn these holy letters, for so I may boldly call them, in memory, with their names, to the intent that the finger may point to the head, and the head to the understanding of his charge. Wow. D then says, you perceive that I have diverse affairs, which at this present do withdraw me from particular diligence using to these characters and their names learning by heart. And therefore I trust I shall not offend if I bestow all the convenient leisure that I shall get about the learning thereof. Me answers back, peace. Talkest as though thou understoodest not. We know thee, we see thee in thy heart, nor one thing shall not let another, for short is the time that shall bring these things to proof. We're not sure whether Dee memorized them very well or not. But anyway, we're going to pick up now with Book 4, Enochian. And I'm sure many of you have been waiting for this section of our material. That's it for Sunday school. You can now feel free to take off your shoes and run to Tooley's drugstore and order a cherry phosphate and a tuna salad sandwich, which is what I would do after Sunday school. Okay, enough of me rambling on. This is going to be a wild week, guys. Keep your heads. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under well.